Hey, everybody. It's Jonathan Simkin here today. And I got two special guests. I got this guy right here. This is Wicket, the Brussels Griffin, who I'm taking care of. Well, I always take care of him, but my wife's away, so he's coming to work this week. There he is. Hopefully he won't bark or make any trouble. But my real special guest today is Steve Jordan. Steve, thank you for doing this. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's a typically gray November day in Toronto, and my son will be coming home from school shortly, which will set my dog off barking. So you may hear that very shortly too.
In anticipation of doing this, I was sort of thinking back to how I met you and when I first met you. When I first met you, you were A&R at Warner Music Canada.
Sounds about right.
And I think like that's when I was just starting to get involved in the music business. And, you know, you were a guy on a list that I had. I was proud of my little database of all the A&R people in Canada. And if I had a band who came to me as a lawyer and I wanted to shop, well, you were one of the people I would send it to. And you and I almost did a deal way back when with an artist named Lena Anderson. Maybe saying we almost did a deal is overstating it. I can't really remember. What I remember
I think we had a discussion about potentially maybe doing a deal. It's sort of like I have an idea of a plan.
I was also interested on your LinkedIn. What is CKLC Radio in Kingston?
Oh my.
Is that a college station?
I don't know. That was a top 40 radio station.
Oh.
That I started working at in my last year of high school. Back in the day, the overnight shift was kind of where you got your start working with the equipment. And I wasn't yet an on-air announcer, like a personality DJ, but so I was running voice track tapes of other announcers, just, a bunch of breaks, and I'd run it in between the songs. And at one point I was running a pre-taped weather forecast, which was clearly wrong.
Oh no.
And but I had to run it. That was the weather break, and you could see that it was snowing outside, and the forecast was for clear skies. And I went to the program director the next day, and I'm like, you should let me go on the air. It was the 2 to 6 shift, actually. It became the midnight to 6. It was 2 to 6 and I said, because I'm running incorrect weather, and like, look, I could totally suck, and I probably will, but the weather will be correct. And they're like, all right. So that is where that was like my first kind of foray into. This is the radio station I grew up listening to and being a fan of. And
are you from Kingston?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I knew that. That's interesting. I've spent a little time there in the last couple of years because my younger son is in commerce at Queens.
Kingston's a great city. I'm working on something there right now, a music festival that'll be starting up next September. So we're currently very quietly launching that, and should have some announcements in the new year. But it's a full circle coming home, because that is, I spent my teen years working full time. And eventually got the, moved up in the hierarchy, which is like moving up doing announcing shifts. Eventually became music director, and launched a lot of local music play. I was like the Rob Robson of Kingston, basically. I hope people know what that reference is. Rob's a legend to me.
Well, for those who don't, Rob was the music director at CFox in Vancouver, and absolutely instrumental to starting the careers of Nickelback, Default, Matthew Good Band, many more I'm forgetting. So that's who Rob Robson is.
And so I did a few things with that. I did a couple of homegrown-ish records with local talent, one that was recorded live. And I had a weekly demo show where I encouraged people to send in their demos. And so we played very early Sarah Harmer, very early Inbreds, Mahones, and a bunch of other bands that you haven't heard of and probably never will. But we were also the very first station to play the hip.
I was going to ask if there's any overlap with the Hip.
Yeah, a lot. I kind of used my position there to worm my way into their world by, as you would as an announcer be sent out to go introduce and MC live concerts with bands you were presenting. I would do that as the CKLC guy with the Hip, even though we were never presenting them. And they also needed absolutely no introduction at all. But they were kind enough to kind of let me be in their orbit in the early days when they were still, almost 100% a cover band, and then 80% a cover band, and then they started to really get their originals in. And it was that was really something. That was a really eye-opening kind of experience, because I had worked with so many local bands, but I'd never really seen, maybe with the exception of Harmer and the Inbreds, but even Harmer's Weeping Child days were still a few years away. You never really thought that a group of like a band from your hometown would have any reach beyond your hometown.
Yep.
It seemed like the odds were just kind of stacked against you, especially if you were as unique as the Hip was. So, it was very, very formative. It was formative in so many ways. It was formative because the guys were such awesome people. My own journey is at least for those early years intertwined with them to some degree, and they still give me credit, way too much, in fact, as being the guy who played the Hip first.
Ah, okay, that's cool. And then so Harmer's from Kingston.
Harmer's from Burlington, but I think she went to Queens. And I think she went to Queens. I'm not sure what brought her to Kingston. She still lives there now. I just saw her last week, and seeing her niece, Georgia Harmer, who's an amazing singer-songwriter.
Oh,
she was around that scene at the time. Fit McConnell from the Mahones. So that first wave of Kingston bands, Pariahs, which I managed a band called the Pariahs, who used to be Guyana Kool-Aid.
That's a great band name. I sometimes refer to myself as a pariah. That's what I was saying when I wrote that article for Billboard. I said I've decided to embrace my full pariah status in the business.
Well, the hell not, man. You don't have identity. You don't have anything.
Hey, man, I'm never getting the Walt Grealis Award. I might as well embrace something, So there you go. But Harmer, goddamn, I loved her so much. And Matt, I still listen to You Were Here all the time. I know she's done other stuff, and she probably gets sick of people always talking about that album. But man, it really impacted me. And when I listen to it now, I'm still amazed by it. It's such a unique work. Didn't sound like anything else. And I met her around that time and was lucky enough to smoke a joint with her somewhere at some restaurant after she had performed at the Vogue, if I remember correctly. And, my wife's a redhead. I have a weakness for redheads, and she was just like a goddess to me. I'm just like, God, beautiful, beautiful voice, amazing writer. And that record, holy, like I say, how many years? That's got to be 20 years ago, 25. And I still listen to it all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great.
And were the Gandharvas from Kingston?
Guelph.
Okay, got that one wrong. So let's go forward then. So you go from the radio station to Kinetic, and then you go to Warner. Who was running Warner? Was that Gary Newman at the time?
No, that was Stan Kulin.
Oh yeah,
Stan was about 7.5 feet tall, and and just an amazing, just full of the folksy wisdom all the time. Loved him. Loved Stan. As did any artist who was on the label and anybody who worked for him.
I remember going out to the building with Steal My Sunshine Len, because they were making a move a bit on them, or didn't end up happening.
Yeah.
But so that's when I met Kulin. I think that was the only time I ever actually met him.
Yeah, that was me. He made that happen. I set up that move.
Yeah, that's ringing a bell. So long ago, I can't remember anything. Yeah. I wonder why we didn't do that deal. I remember feeling like we were going to. I think
Well, you
all of a
signed with
sudden
work eventually, didn't you? This,
signed with Work Group.
yeah.
Went well, obviously. That
Well,
song was a monster. It was the third most played song in the world in 1998.
okay.
And that was that period where Chris Taylor and I sort of carved up the country. And if you're on the West Coast, most likely I was your lawyer. If you were on the East Coast, most likely Chris was your lawyer. Once in a while, we'd sneak into each other's territory and poach. So I poached Len out of Toronto and he poached Nelly Furtado out of Victoria. But yeah, what a different, I mean, God, the business is unrecognizable from what it was like then.
I don't even know what the business is now.
I don't either. And I run a record label. I should probably learn and I should probably try to figure it out here. I mean, we're lucky. 604 is lucky because, we have so much catalog that still moves. And so that really kind of keeps the lights on and it really sustains the company. I mean, whether it's Call Me Maybe or whether it's Theory of a Dead Man or Marianas Trench or Dallas Smith, there's not as much pressure as there used to be to that everything's got to be a big hit. We could be patient with artists knowing that, all that catalog. Because remember, I never gave up digital all these years. Never, not my first deal, not my recent deal, not my current deal. I never, and funny enough, I'm at Warner now. So full circle.
Nice. The label world, that whole thing for the longest time was all I aspired to do. And then I got there and I was like, this is everything I imagined it would be. I get to travel. I get to meet people all over North America. I get to go see bands and get paid to do it. And then after a few years of that, you're like, I don't want to go see bands. Because honestly, 90% of the things you're going to check out are not good. And
Correct.
Speaking of Stan, we used to have these amazing conversations, and one of them was like, went like this. It's like, Steve, because he would sign off on my expenses and he would see my bar tabs at the Horseshoe. And it's like, Steve, are you actually going to find our next big thing at the Horseshoe? And I'm like, I hear you, but a lot of bands come through there, especially traveling bands. So it makes some sense, but I hear what you're saying. He's like, name me one Toronto band that's multi-platinum. And I would say Our Lady Peace, Blue Rodeo. And then I kind of stall because he was right. Because a lot of people move to Toronto to try and make their career happen. And I said, Stan, sometimes I think we'd be better off getting me and my family in a camper van or a Winnebago and driving across the country and literally knocking on doors to ask anybody if there are musicians in the house. And it would probably be a more efficient way of finding talent. And he actually was for a second going,
interesting idea.
Yeah. Then I left. That it didn't happen. But no, he was great like that. He had a way of making a point without scolding you, without, knocking you down a peg or anything like that. But it still reminded you of who was in charge, but he did it with wisdom and grace. And everything like that was a bit of a learning opportunity as much as it was a correction.
It's a hell of a job. I mean, it really is. And it's hard to explain to people sometimes. And, here I am, somehow 604 is 22 years old and it's all a blur almost now. And people always asking me how do you sign bands? Like, I don't know. I really don't know. It's like, how have you had all this success signing bands? I don't know. I sign stuff I like, and I guess I'm lucky. Turns out other people like it too. I have really no other explanation.
Because Jonathan, your tastes are so pedestrian. So many other people in the world will like what you like.
Yeah, I should change the name to Lowest Common Denominator Records.
I think that's a good point, though. I have a true story for you. It involves Nickelback. For my one.
Oh, go. Let's hear.
I sent them a form letter. And I actually would be super interested for you to check the archives if they have such a thing. I'm sure they kept it, and see if there's a rejection letter from me with my name on it. And point being that
yes.
I was just, a little bit young and stupid, and kind of forgot that the whole point of the job is to try to bring in things that are going to sell a lot. It wasn't a matter of me not hearing commercial potential. It was just a matter of me not enjoying what I was listening to. And that if I was going to bring that through the system, or attempt to bring that through the system, you're going to have to listen to that record 4,000 times, even before the public hears it. So you kind of don't want to, pummel your psyche and hate the thing before you put it out. But like I said, that was a huge mistake on my part, obviously, in terms of what the remit of the job is. So lesson learned, but you kind of have to do that, especially if it's your own thing. I was gambling with that with house money, but you're like, you to sustain your drive and interest in the project, it's got to be something that you like.
And I guess I have such a broad taste in music that's why. I think that's why sometimes people find 604 confusing from the outside, because, how is it that Theory of a Dead Man is on the same label as The Organ? Well, it's because I like a lot of different, that's it. Like, it's not more complicated than that. Like, there are labels who do one thing, and that's cool. I have no issue with that. Like, if you want to start a surf punk label because you love surf punk, God bless you. I think that's cool. But I've just always had such a broad palette of stuff I liked. And I mean, Nickelback, I fell in love with them as people, I think, as much as I fell in love with the music. And of course, when you're just getting a CD sent to you in the mail, you don't have that benefit. You don't have the benefit of sitting down with the people. I remember my first meeting with them. It was incredible, and I didn't have a label, of course. I was just a lawyer then. And, my wife's a lawyer as well. I think you've met her in the past, but, we used to work together till we had kids, and then she took off to do that. But, I remember going into her office after I met with the Nickelback guys. They left me a burned CD of their demos. And I walked into Jennifer's office with it, and I said, I hope I like this, because, man, there is something about that guy. Like, I knew it right from the first time I met him. Like, boom, I knew I wanted to be involved with these people. Now, they weren't on my label. I wish they were. Maybe I would have looked at it slightly differently if I was looking at them as a potential signing. But as just a lawyer to rep them, I was like, I love these people as human beings. Now, the Warner thing's interesting, because the rejection letter would have probably gone to me, because I was doing all the shopping. And I kind of remember that. And not only do I remember that, Warner circled back around because, and I don't know if you were still, I'm looking at your thing. You were there until 90. Oh yeah, you were there because we did our deal with Roadrunner in 99.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the wherewithal at the time, I don't know how, but to exclude Canada from that deal. And once everybody heard, they're signing the Roadrunner, suddenly everybody was interested, including Warner. We ended up with EMI for Canada.
Well, I remember that. I remember that Music West showcase at the Starfish Room, and
they were horrible. We had a horrible night,
and every single A&R person in Western civilization was in that room. And I remember that tiny little dressing room in the back. I was sent to go like make a connection or whatever. And there's Ralph James, there's Ron Bergen, and they're two both physically and metaphysically large people. And I'm like, and then all of the other obnoxious USA&R people. And I was like, I took one step in that room. I went, there's no way I'm competing with this. Like, there's there's just, what am I going to say? These guys are like in there already. And in fact, I felt a little bit sorry for the guys because it was such a, I can't even think of the word. Frenzy.
It was a bit overwhelming. I remember that. It was an overwhelming kind of night. And I remember they didn't play very well. And I remember that the band that opened for them was Flybanger. I don't know if you remember them. And they ended up getting signed as a result of their show that night to James Diener. Yeah, James Diener signed them.
Wow.
And he was, which major was he at? I can't remember now. He was at a major in the States. They were maybe called Jar then, and then they had to change their name because there was another Jar. So they changed their name to Flybanger. But yes, I remember that night really well because there was so much pressure. And it wasn't their best show. And I remember Ralph and me kind of comforting them afterwards to say, you're fine. You're good. It's going to be fine. Yeah. And of course, it did end up being fine. But good God, showcases are a nightmare. Like when there's that many A&R people in the room, it's just not natural, you know?
Indeed.
Why did you leave Warner? I don't remember that either.
I got downsized, organized out.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And the one thing I didn't know, and I was sort of surprised when I looked at your resume, I don't remember you being at True North, but you were there for a few years.
Yeah. When I think they got a little bit of government programming funding to hire an A&R person. And so they approached me for that. And a bunch of great things happened there. Number one, I met my current wife, Michelle Murphy there. She was working there. I got to work with Rheostatics, Howie Beck, Golden Dogs, and then, you know, the legends like Blackie and the Rodeo Kings and Bruce Coburn and Michael Acapinti and some of those other legendary and formative artists that had been on the label for a bunch of years. And I got to work.
Was that when Finkelstein's? Was that when Bernie was the guy?
I worked closely with Bernie. In fact, we managed the Golden Dogs together. And by managing, I mean, we split our meager profits 50-50 and I did most of the work. And Bernie was there to cast historical wisdom. And it was awesome. I loved my time working for Bernie. And man, that guy's got so many stories that are so informative and helpful. So that was a good time. But the other thing that happened while I was there, the good thing that happened while I was there, as I said, Bernie, I'm working on this thing because by that time I'd had the idea for what Polaris became. And I said, I want to take this job, but I also want to keep working on this other thing and try and get it off the ground. And he said, as long as it doesn't interfere with the work I need you to do, I'm happy to support it. So I owe him a lot for that.
Rheostatics, what was their involvement with True North? That doesn't ring a bell to me.
We signed them for, we did a single record deal for, oh my God. Now I can't remember the title of the record, but it had the postage stamps on it. That one.
Like a single or a album?
No, a full album. Mm-hmm.
Was it the one with record body count, like that first one?
No, it was after that.
God, I love that band. So, you know, I went to law school at Osgoode in Toronto. So I was in law school in Toronto 85 to 88-ish. And I was not in the music business. I was not planning to be in the music business. It was not even on my radar. But I loved music. And I used to go to the Spadina Hotel. And that's when it was like Rheostatics, Bare Naked Ladies, Moxie Fruvis, Change of Heart, and 13 Engines. And they would kind of rotate, like you'd go on a Friday, Saturday. Holy
yeah.
What an experience.
Lowest of the low.
Yeah. I love the Rheostatics. I love all those bands, but actually, I wasn't a big fan of Moxie Fruvis, and I'm not just saying that for obvious reasons, but I mean, I just wasn't my cup of tea. But boy, the Rheostatics, man, live, to hear Martin Tielli singing live in that room was just a revelation. What a voice, what a player. I mean, they were all great, but my God, I love that band.
The album we put out was 2067, is what it was called.
So let's talk Polaris then, since you brought that up. And in fact, I have a prop here I want to show you.
Oh, look at that.
And I got to tell you, like, I know I have famously said things about award shows, and I don't like award shows for the most part. I think they kind of run contrary to what art should be. I have never quite understood the need of humanity to have to say, first place goes to, it's fine. I know I'm the odd man out, I guess, on like that, and that's fine. I can live with that. But I will say this, it was a real thrill to get that award. It really, really was. In part because that record meant so much to me. That band, as much as they don't like me, meant so much to me. And to get that award 20 years after the fact is really unbelievable. And I immediately ordered 2 copies of the plaque and said, one's going in my house, one's going in my office. But let's talk Polaris a little bit. Like, even though that was our first time ever getting an award, I've obviously been conscious of it. We've had a few artists who were either short or long listed. Louise Burns a couple of times. Carly Rae Jepsen. I believe Emotion was maybe even shortlisted.
It was shortlisted, and she performed with the TSO that year, our gala.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, so I don't know, what was it that made you decide to start it?
Well, I want to touch on something you said, which is that you hate award shows. And it's not that I also hate award shows. I grew up watching award shows and loving the performances more than anything else. That to me was the exciting thing. And the nominees and the winners, that's just a hook to get you into, oh, I don't think I've heard that record yet, and so Polaris was imagined as trying to channel some of that for good. In other words, we're making an award show for people who don't like award shows. And that ethos touched everything we did, from the nomination process to the actual night. And this, comes from someone who'd been to a ton of local and national and international award shows, and just observing how things are done and always questioning, why that way? Maybe there's a more musical way to do this. And so I'm really happy that I think we stuck to that vision and managed to create that world within a world, I guess. And we would say, you guys are suckers for caring about the winner. It's not about who wins and loses. It's about you paying attention. And when everything is vying for your attention these days, now more than ever before, we're taking your attention and thrusting it on these records that probably wouldn't have heard it before. And that's the whole point of it. That's the function of it. And so we're competitors by nature, like it or not. And as much as I agree with the voices who say art's not a competition, that our human nature is also there to go, I wonder who's going to win, or I wonder who's going to be nominated. And so to seize that attention and go, well, have you heard the organ? Though they won this, to transfer that energy over to what a bunch of music nerds think are worthy. That's what we set out to do. But the original idea was basically, there was a few things. I've told this story a few times, but a few things sort of coming together at the same time. One was how much attention I had been paying to the Mercury Prize in the UK. So It's not a terribly original idea. It already existed, albeit in a slightly different form. It came from one of my most trusted A&R sources, not being, other managers, lawyers, publicists. Not that there were not good lawyers, managers, and publicists and agents out there, but they all have a fiduciary interest in promoting the things that they're trying to get you to sign, which, everybody knows that when you're having those conversations. So I would trust the music writers more because they'd be telling me, we think this is really great for its musical qualities and nothing else. But even before Polaris started, that's how I found out about Tegan and Sarah, when they were Sarah and Tegan, from Mike Bell in Calgary, who was the local writer there. heck, even from the media side, Rob Robson, who we talked about before, it wasn't just that Matthew Good was getting spins, and that Rob's like, this is crazy good, and it just came from our locale. I found out about, the Deers and Stars and Metric and Broken Social Scene and Arcade Fire and but Danko Jones. Like these were all artists who were first championed by journalists and media people. And at the time it started, all of those bands I just mentioned were setting out, eschewing the Canadian major label apparatus, which I had just been turfed from, and going, we don't need to do this here. We can do a bunch of international deals all over the place. And in fact, a lot of those artists were getting audience outside of Canada before they got to Godspeed.
Yeah.
Like Emperor is one of the best examples of that. I went to Iceland Airways one year, and every record store I went to had a section for Godspeed. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? So
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, it was about repatriating international interest in Canadian artists back to Canada as much as it was promoting Canadian artists outside of Canada. I remember one year when Caribou won Polaris, and I remember an unnamed old crow of the Canadian music industry telling me, like, why did you pick this loser to win? Like, no one's ever heard of him. And literally 3 months later, I'm in Dublin, and I walk into the one of the two still existing Tower Records, and Caribou's last 3 records are front rack, and they're playing them in the store. And I was like, this is just, yeah. Oh my God. And so I went and introduced myself, and they're like, we just saw him at Electric Picnic, and there was like 10,000 people. We lost our fucking heads. Like, so there's just that, we just caught lightning in a bottle and got to capture that reality, at kind of a perfect time, maybe even a couple of years too late, because it was after Funeral by Arcade Fire and, a few of those big major, and the first Broken Social, or the second Broken Social Scene record. And I also saw how the Giller Prize exploded sales for the titles. And so all of those things just sort of came together when the idea came to me.
And I mean, that's a nice legacy for you. I mean, that you may have left, but it still lives and it still thrives.
Towards the end of my time there, I started to have a feeling like, if this thing's gonna outlive me, I gotta stop being so closely publicly associated with it. I want it to kind of have its own personality that sustains itself beyond my tenure. So I started not giving quotes for press releases and just withdrawing from that. How much that worked, I'm not really sure. It's still, I'm still quite proud of when I mentioned that it's a thing that I did, that people recognize it and seem to be impressed by it. But ultimately, as long as it still serves the original function, was to say, look, there are things coming out of Canada which are really great. Media largely ignores it, especially radio, because that's what radio does. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just ceased to serve a function of trying to turn people on to good new things. There are some obvious exceptions, especially at campus radio and some alternative stations, but by and large, we know the deal. So
they're selling ads. That's really all that's about. And let's face it, now that terrestrial radio has really lost a lot of its punch and a lot of its appeal and a lot of its listenership, more than ever, I think it is no longer a place really where they're going to be taking chances or playing stuff that they already know people want to, popular stuff. It's sad to me in a way, because you really, like Rob Robson, and we keep talking about him, but man, he took a chance on so many bands. He was the first guy to play so many bands who ended up having a lot of success. And that's sort of becoming more difficult now. because there's just not the margin there to really allow for that anymore.
What I don't understand, Jonathan, is, and like we discussed, I came from radio, and it was drilled into my head all the time that the success for a local station meant being truly local, giving local news. And to me, the extension of that is playing local talent. And what they want is familiarity. They don't want you to turn up the radio when something comes on. They just don't want you to turn it off because,
right.
They heard something that might have offended them or grated on their nerves or something like that. And that's really sad, because it's still, your license is still given to you, and there are conditions attached. And one of them should be to properly, not just with the contributions they make to CCD, but to actually play, local artists. And, it's not like C Fox's ratings went down when they did that. They went up because they were giving the audience something they wouldn't get anywhere else. And to me, that is the key to a successful media.
And that Seeds contest that Rob ran was huge. I mean, that's what local bands aspire to, which was amazing because, you aspire to that. That was something that was actually within reach. That was something that was realistic. You'd submit it. Rob would actually listen to everything that got submitted, as well as Todd Hancock and all the DJs there. And if you won that, or you came in second, you got on that CD. Hey, you know what? That led to other things for people. It was amazing, and it's sad to me. So sad that that's kind of no longer. The last thing like that in Vancouver was the Peak Performance program, but that was a direct function of their license. And once they weren't obligated to do that anymore, I think they just decided it's expensive and we're just not going to do it anymore. That's not a slag. It's just the reality of running a radio station.
There are business realities, and I get those. And I'm not. This isn't a slag. It's just sadness that I'm expressing. And then, and so things like Polaris I think are still needed for people who are still interested in music. And that's the other reality you're dealing with right now. Is you're not just competing against other labels who release records. It's a competition for attention. And with social media, video, like all the things that people talk about, my worry and humans evolve and society evolves, but the role of music in society is certainly not what it was, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And now it's background for TikToks, and people still do respond to the music. Do you know what I mean? They still very much respond to it. But the level of intimacy that they have, I think, with the music, I'm worried about it. And so as long as Polaris can kind of maintain that, hey, these artists worked really hard expressing themselves and making something that they are proud of. And there's a lot of reasons and a lot of different reasons why this stuff should be interesting to you potentially. It still speaks to a cohort that's still really, really into music. And I'm worried that cohort is shrinking, and that music is just another thing that people pay attention to, but they're not that invested in.
Yeah, I agree. You were saying you have kids, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many kids you got?
I have 4.
You do?
Yeah, 4.
Okay. You should double check. That's good. And age range?
30 to 17.
Okay. So it's interesting, right? I have 2 boys. I have 2 teenage. Well, Connell's not a teenager anymore. Connell's 22. Henry is 18. And it's been fascinating to kind of see what they listen to, like where they're at musically. I don't know if you use your kids as a gauge. I do all the time.
100%.
And what's interesting to me is, well, number one, they couldn't give a about anything on my label. Couldn't give a. They're so honest. I love it. They like hip hop, man. They listen to hip hop. That's what they listen to.
Well,
and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but it's just interesting to me.
Listen to more than hip hop, Jonathan. Like, and again, this is all anecdotal, what we're talking right now, but my 17, 18-year-old son, he'll come to me and he'll go, Dad, do you know this? And it'll be something I've never heard of before, like Peso Pluma.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, this is really cool. And not a single word in English and not even a single drum beat. The percussion is all horns. And he's like, yeah. And the songs are about like narco gangsters. And I'm like, oh, so it's basically like gangster rap, but without the rapping. Instead, it's like got this, Colombian kind of like, I'm like, I could not imagine as a 17-year-old with a top 40 radio station that I ended up going to work at. And there was range there. It's one of the things I appreciate about the top 40 format in the late 70s, early 80s, but not that much range. And then he'll come back the next day and be like, hey, do you know this? This is a jam. And it's Going Up the Country by Canned Heat. And so, there must be something trending on TikTok at the time, whatever. I don't really care. I think it's awesome that they're getting this range of stuff from social media. I think that's one of the good things about it. And so his range is wide. He'll go into like a 40s jazz scenario. He's super into Drake. And it's not this sort of performative, I got range. It's just that he gloms onto. And he actually has really good ears. And my favorite thing to do now is when he's onto something that's, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but it's a recent artist that sounds like someone else from 20 years ago. I can go, I know who this person listened to. And it's okay. Like everybody, when they start off, aspire to be, one of their favorite artists. And I can take 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years and I'll be like, oh, okay. It's great. We have a great dialogue about music. My other three are into it in different ways and display it in different ways, and it's all good. It's all good. And so it's not. So the range is there, and as we're trying to put this festival together, the notion that you got to sort of stick in a lane musically, I don't think the kids give a shit about that anymore. I really don't.
I agree. I agree.
And in fact, I don't think anyone's really given a shit about that. And I think, again, that's another place where radio kind of fell down going, well, and this was something I was told programming on my top 40 station, well, we're not really going to play rap music because there aren't a lot of black people in Kingston. And I'd be like, people other than black people listen to rap music. It's quite popular.
Well, I think, I think that started to all change with the iPod. I mean, the iPod was kind of the first time where it was like different genres could live comfortably together in a device. I mean, for me personally, that changed everything. Like I was such an album guy and I still am an album guy, but the iPod kind of changed that for me and Spotify just reinforced that. Like I make my own playlists. I really don't give a shit about like necessarily, like I'll listen to a new album. Like I'm a big fan of Tame Impala. That new record came out and of course I listened to it start to finish. Mm-hmm. But then I took my favorite songs and added them to the playlist. Mm-hmm. So I may never listen to that album again from start to finish.
Yeah.
And just to give...
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, just to give Henry, my kid, a little bit of credit. He has interesting tastes. Like I'll be listening to stuff sometimes and he'll be like, who's that? And then I'll find out that he actually added it to his playlist and went and listened. So like one great example is Klaus Nomi. You know Klaus Nomi?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Love Klaus Nomi. Love. And so does Henry, strangely, and Tame Impala. So, sometimes, and even some weird 70s stuff that I listen to, it's interesting.
Even back in my A&R days, though, again, I think where radio kind of got it wrong, thinking that people's tastes were narrow and they couldn't withstand anything that was outside of that narrow lane. And yet I go to people's houses and people who are not music geeks, right? Like just regular ass people, but they still bought CDs. And you would see Metallica's Black Album, and you would see Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and you would see a Billie Holiday collection, and you would see, I don't know, the frickin' Gin Blossoms or something. Like you would see, and those are just like super popular artists. So they weren't really going into the fringes of, super geeky, but they still, their tastes weren't defined to hip hop or metal or jazz. They had all of those things living next to each other. Yeah, that was one of the things that I really wanted to try and instill in my days at CBC Music, was to kind of get back to. I think people are more open and accepting than anyone in media gives them credit for.
I think that's probably true. So that's right. You went from Polaris to CBC, and then just because we're kind of running out of time, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about what you're doing now, and if there's anything you want to promote or anything you want to, because I know you're doing consulting now, and there's also this thing about the board of directors of the Community Broadcasters Foundation, which I don't think I know what that is. So why you start there? What's that?
So Community Broadcasters Foundation is there's a Community Broadcasters Fund, and they are there to raise money for marginalized radio communities to do programming. A lot of money goes to Indigenous programming. And it's there as a way of kind of micro granting, I guess, for lack of a better term. We tend to think of radio as this big conglomeration that has to do certain numbers, or it fails to do its thing. Or in fact, there's still a wide network, especially where internet access is scarce, and radio stations are community lifelines. And so this is an offshoot of the fund that is a foundation to try and raise more money to contribute to the fund. So that's there was a call for a board of directors, and I'm like, a lot of their aims and objectives really speak to me. The consulting is, back in my radio days, we had our opinions of consultants. So trying to put aside the negativity around, those who can, those who don't consult. But it puts me in a position now of just being able to take a lot of the experience I've had, experiences, plural, that I've had over however many goddamn years I've been in and around, and also some learnings, and apply those to other projects that are suitable. One thing we just finished working on, there's a group called the Toronto Music Experience, and they are trying to build kind of like a Toronto history memories concern, potentially with a facility it's sort of reductive to call it a music museum. I think it aspires to be much more than that. But I helped on a feasibility study for those guys, and lots of good people behind there: Kim Cook, Denise Donlin, Nick Jennings, and a few other Toronto names you might know. So that's an interesting thing. I did some work for it, keeping an eye on, and then this festival that I'm working on, which is as yet unannounced, but that'll be in Kingston in September, downtown.
Yeah, you ever been to that in Seattle? There's what do they call it? It was one of the founders of Microsoft.
It was Experience Music, and now it is the Pop Culture Museum. It's an interesting. I did this is a whole podcast unto itself, but I did a whole research project looking at music museums around the world, and not just studying the type of programming they do and how they came to be, but how they're funded, how audiences find them, and visitor numbers, all those kinds of things, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. Unfortunately, the one in Seattle kind of had to move to more of a pop culture focus because music itself was not doing the numbers. Now they still have their funders still have deep pockets, but they'll do things like video games, horror movies, and on and on. It's an interesting pivot.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I find as I'm getting older, I'm more inclined to be looking backwards a little bit more. And I started
It's
that
natural.
imprint. I think it is. I started that imprint decades, which has just been about finding, getting all these bands, mostly who I was the lawyer for back in the '90s, who didn't get a deal because most bands didn't get a deal, and kind of going, hey, you still have that record that I was shopping 30 years ago?
Oh, wow.
So we put out
what an interesting project.
We put out Movie Land. That was the first one. And that was the band that became Pluto. You remember Pluto? They were on Mint.
Uh-huh. On Mint, and then
Well, before they were Pluto, they were Movie Land. And I put that out. And it was so funny because I called Alan from the band. He lives in England now. I said, hey, man, do you still have that album that we made? And he said, yeah. Did you ever put it out? He said, no. I said, do you still have the masters? He said, oh, yeah, I got everything. I said, what if I wanted to put it out now? And there's kind of a pause. I hadn't talked to him in 25 years. There's this pause. I'm in my 50s, right? I said, dude, I don't need you to tour. I just want to put out the record. And it was such a lovely experience, and it charted. So, and he called me all teary about it and said like, wow, I'm showing my kid the chart, the Earshot chart. I can't believe I'm charting with a record I recorded 32 years ago.
Amazing.
I love it. I love it. So that's a big part of my focus now. I'm letting a lot of the young people here sign the bands now. I feel like that's more appropriate these days. I'm focusing on the decades thing and on catalog stuff. I love re-releases. I love, like, that Oregon re-release was amazing. Like,
can you
what a thrill it was.
Why don't you go try and grab all those old Odds records and put them out on vinyl?
Well, but because somebody probably owns them.
Yeah. So,
I mean,
so go get
somebody whose permission I would need. I might try, but I mean, and I've tried a few where I just, like, what record I desperately wanted to put out was that famous Copyright record that they recorded for Geffen.
The Circle C.
Circle C. And Tom from the band pissed off Geffen at the CD release party, and he deleted the record the day it came out. I have a copy that I bought on release day, and it's got the hole punch, the deleted hole punch in it. But, majors aren't very cool about that. I got a hold of Interscope, and I thought, hey, I delivered them Call Me Maybe, one of the biggest selling singles in history. Maybe they'll be nice and license that record back to me. Nope.
Yeah.
Just the policy.
It's a sad state of affairs. They just hoard onto these copyrights, and then, that's it.
Well, they'd rather not release it and own it than at least make a little bit of money off of it.
Just make their trickles of streaming income.
No, they don't even, it's not even released. It's even worse than that. It's unreleased.
It's not on any of the streamers?
They deleted it, and then they never put it out again. So it's frustrating, but whatever. It is what it is. Steve, thank you. This has really been great to catch up with you and great to hear what you're doing now. And, it sounds like that festival is interesting. If it's happening when school's on, I'll probably be hitting you up to get my kids some tickets.
We are planning a VIP section, Jonathan.
Oh, I love it. And here's the evidence. I've got it on. You're recorded. Okay, man. Well, take it easy. Thanks for doing this again. And, continued success. And let's keep representing for us old dudes in the music business.
You bet. Cheers.